In today's video, I'll be sharing with you 8 approachable pattern ideas for Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve cast-ons. So grab something warm to drink and your knitting and let's get started. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Midweek Ramble. My name is Taylor and I will be your host. Today is a special holiday edition of the Midweek Ramble, and as I mentioned in my newsletter last month, I would be doing this Midweek Ramble in my Christmas pajamas. So this is them. They're not like outright in your face Christmas, but they're buffalo plaid, and these are my favorite ones to wear at Christmas time. So here we are. I also had mentioned that this is going to be an after dark episode, but because I am filming this on Wednesday, I needed to get it done because we have some things that we're doing tonight as a family for the holidays, and I knew I wouldn't be able to film it after dark. So here we are in my jammies, and I also decided, because I was otherwise just wearing jammies and that felt kind of strange, I was never the kid who wanted to wear pajamas to school. I decided I would throw some knits on. So I am wearing my fire pit mitts today to keep my hands warm because it is very chilly, even in the house. So we have some knits, we have jammies, I have a cozy beverage of pumpkin spice apple cider that I picked up at the store that is delicious. We have some holiday decor. I'm ready to get started. So let's go ahead and dive into 8 approachable knitting patterns for your Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve cast on. Okay, when I was thinking about coming up with the ideas for this video, there were some thoughts that I had in terms of how I wanted to choose the patterns, the approach I wanted to take when it came to which patterns I did choose. And so I want to share that with you here. Because Christmas Eve cast-ons or New Year's Eve cast-ons are typically projects that we're going to have moving into the new year, I felt like this was a really great place to either try something approachable and new, for example, a piece that you've never knit before, but that wasn't going to be a huge time investment or a yarn investment or financially an investment when it came to downloading the pattern. I also was thinking that these should be projects that you can get some rather instant gratification. Maybe not super instant gratification, something that you're going to finish in that one sitting of knitting or even 2, but something that you knew going into the new year wasn't going to last for a long time. There was no chance of it becoming a back burner project. It was something you knew you could finish and have that feeling of accomplishment going right into the new year. So that was in the back of my mind when I created this list of patterns. I also want to mention that this is a list of 8. I created a pretty big bundle of other patterns that I think fit this category, and you can find that bundle in my favorites over on Ravelry, and I will link directly to that down below in the description box along with all of the direct links to the patterns that I mentioned here. You can also find the pattern to the fire pit mitts that I'm wearing now. This is a pattern by me. I know. Is she ever going to stop talking about the fire pit mitts? Probably not until the season changes, but you can find that link down below in the description box as well. As I've done before in these previous episodes of the Midweek Ramble where I share patterns with you, I am going to be sharing my screen with you using the Ravit app. This is an app that you can get for both Android and iOS. It is essentially a Ravelry app that you can have on your mobile device, and it's fantastic. I'll link to it down below. I'm going to do a link for the iOS version and the Android version down below if you're interested in using this app, but what you see on your screen, that's what I'm using is the Ravelry or Ravit app. Okay, coming in at number 8, this is a chunky mitten pattern that I found that I wanted to cast it on right away, but I'm gonna hold off, and this may end up being my Christmas Eve cast on. This is the Leni's Chunky Mittens, a free download, and it's a beautiful pair of chunky classic mittens with the closed hand, so they're not fingerless. Just a really classic style of mitten. It's with chunky yarn. The yarn being used here is Alaflos Lopi, which is by Istex. It's a bulky weight Icelandic yarn. It's beautiful. You can use any bulky weight yarn for this that you want. This just looks like a really easy and functional Christmas Eve cast on that you know you're going to be using after Christmas because the weather tends to get colder after Christmas in a lot of places, depending of course on where you are. These, I have to mention this here too, that a lot of these are going to be geared towards colder weather. Most knits are, I guess you could say. So those of you in the Southern Hemisphere right now, you're celebrating a really nice, warm, sunny Christmas. These would be something you can cast on at your Christmas Eve or your New Year's Eve with the thoughts of using them in the coming colder months. Okay, so back to these mittens. I think they are lovely. It says these are a classic, plain, well-fitting, and very warm mittens knit up in the wonderful. Oliflow Slopey and using large needles. This is a quick knit. You can easily finish a pair in a day. So if you are looking for a Christmas Eve cast on that you can be wearing on Christmas Day, this is definitely one for you. I'm loving that it is a free pattern, and I just think they're a really great looking pair of mittens. This is a design by Grelina Fry. I don't know if it's Fry or Free. You can find it down below, link down below. I think that I might be casting these on. I don't know if it's going to be Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, but I definitely think I'm going to be casting them on. And because it's using chunky yarn, I happen to have a ball of Wonder Fluff in my stash from Knit Picks. This yarn is so beautiful. This is a 70% baby alpaca, 23% nylon, and 7% merino. And it is so nice. It has that like chainette kind of look to it, and it looks like it's a blown yarn. It is so beautiful. Blown yarn, if you're not familiar with that, it's where they create kind of like a chained outer tubing of fiber, and then other fiber gets like blown into the tubing. It's really hard to explain, but it's just a really interesting structure of yarn. And this is a bulky weight, and I love the color, and I feel like this would make a gorgeous pair of the Oma Leni's chunky mittens. So that is Wonder Fluff, bulky weight by Knit Picks. I'm loving it. It is 142 yards and 50 grams. That might be probably my New Year's Eve cast on. Okay, this next one I added to my favorites. I want to say about 2 years ago. People love a really beautiful cowl that they can slip over their head, bundle it up under a really lovely sweater or jacket. It just looks so classic and warm and cozy. And I love this particular one because it brings out the texture. And when it comes to knitting this design, it's like a texture sampler. And that is the Heart Warmer, and it's by Justina Lorkowska, the Heart Warmer cowl. And you guys, it is stunning. So you're seeing it here in this really gorgeous kind of a mustard honey color, but look at that gorgeous texture. It's everywhere. I mean, you have lace work, you have some really nice ribbing in there, you have baubles. It's just beautiful. So if you want something that allows you to play around with texture, but you don't want to knit something super big, you don't want it to be a huge time investment, but you also want to be able to use up some of that maybe fingering weight sock yarn that you have in your stash, this is a really great place to go. It looks like it uses between 481 and 525 yards of fingering weight yarn. There is a good chance you have 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn in your stash that are the same colorway that you could pull out for this project. Or let's say you only have 1 skein of fingering weight yarn and it's probably 435 yards or maybe just 400 yards. Perhaps knit the cowl and just chop off, not like literally, but omit one of the texture sections. Just shorten it up a little bit. It's a really generous cowl with lots of length there. You could afford to shorten it up by removing one of the panels if you don't have the amount of yarn called for here. That's what's great about a cowl. You don't have to worry too much about gauge, and you really don't have to worry too much about length because you can adjust that as you go. A great place to use up some of that yarn you already have instead of trying to invest in new yarn for a Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve cast on going into the new year. Loving this design. It's $5.50 US, and it is available on Ravelry, and I've linked to it down below. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. It says, designed to be playful and use just 1 skein of Tibetan singles, Heart Warmer is meant to be your go-to neck piece this winter and spring, or even the next. So it's nice because it is geared towards spring wearing, which is perfect for us in the Northern Hemisphere who are going to be moving into spring. So I just love this. I think it's great. This is using Norn yarn in that Yak singles, and then it looks like Kettle Yarn Company in their single ply. So it's just using a single ply skein of yarn, which is why they're calling for 481 yards. A single skein of single ply fingering weight yarn is less than 481 yards. So you are going to need more than 1 skein of yarn if you want to knit the entire cowl. But like I said, you could omit one of those panels of texture and you're good as gold if you only have 1 skein of fingering weight yarn. So that is the Heart Warmer beautifully textured cowl, and that is, like I said, by Justina Lorkowska. Okay, this next design is one by me. I designed these a few years ago, and the purpose for them, well, the reason I designed them the way that they are was I had the thought of New Year's Eve parties in mind, or holiday parties in mind in general. Parties where you kind of want to dress up a little bit, but you might be going to a person's home where they require you to remove your shoes, which is like our home. We are a shoeless home, and if we have a party in our home, we still require people to remove their shoes. And in cases like that, when you're dressed up, sometimes removing your shoes kind of feels like you're removing a pretty integral part of your outfit. And I totally get it. Still, we're a shoeless household, and there are lots of shoeless households. And I thought these would be kind of a cute way to show something that you've created that has a little bit of a fancy side to it that you can put on your feet after you've removed your shoes at a nicer holiday party. I like to call these the cocktail socks. I designed this to use one skein of DK weight yarn, and you're not even going to use the whole skein because they're shorty socks. I wanted them to be shorty socks because I feel that that's just a little bit more chic, I guess, if you're going to a party and you're removing your shoes. Something that's long and bunchy might not be what you're looking for. Something like this is just a little bit more chic, so they are a shorty sock, and they have a really lovely lace design both on the top and on the bottom underneath the foot to give you kind of a, I don't know, again, a little bit more of a luxe look for a sock. And of course, depending on the yarn that you're using to knit these, that's going to really determine whether or not they're really cozy looking or a little bit more luxe. And if you decided to use a DK weight yarn that had a little bit of stellina in there, or maybe you wanted to hold some yarn with a mohair to give it a little bit of a floof, you could really have fun making these super dressy, super cozy at the same time, but perfect for wearing to a shoeless household holiday party. So these are the cocktail socks. I knit these using a Fiber for the People yarn in the BFL DK base, and this was a colorway that I had been featuring at the time called Minky. You can see that that lace panel goes all the way up the bottom of the sock as well. However, the heel is stockinette stitch and the toe is stockinette stitch, so you don't have any kind of agitation or weird feeling of texture under those parts of your feet. A really lovely sock, in my opinion. I actually don't have a pair of these on hand because the pairs that I have knit in the past have been gifted, but I do want to knit myself a pair of cocktail socks because I just love the idea of having something like this that's easy to slip on and looks nice for those moments where you're shoeless, but you still want your outfit to look pulled together. And you can be pretty strategic if you want to cast these on for Christmas Eve, thinking that you might be wearing them on New Year's Eve. You can choose a yarn that coordinates with whatever you're going to be wearing, you know, all of this. I am not one for going to New Year's Eve parties. I've not really done that in a very long time, so I speak like I know what I'm talking about. I'm just going on what I know about New Year's Eve parties, and for those of you out there that have one to go to, or even if you don't, but you still want something sassy to wear on your feet for the celebration, this is a really great option. So this is the Cocktail Socks by yours truly. I'm linking to it down below. It uses 150 to 200 yards of DK weight yarn, a little bit more on the 150 end. 200 yards is listed in the pattern just as insurance, but that is less than a full skein of DK weight yarn. Any DK weight yarn will do. They're just a lot of fun to knit. So that is the Cocktail Socks by yours truly, and that is coming in at number 6 on our list. Okay, sticking with the theme of being able to bust those single skeins of sock yarn that you undoubtedly have in your stash, this is a design intended just for one skein of yarn by the lovely Joji Locatelli. This is called the Lone Skein Shawl. It uses just 440 yards of fingering weight yarn, and I am pretty sure you can get away, and I believe unless you're purchasing, there's certain yarns that come in 400 yard skeins, and that may not be enough to cover this, but with most of her designs, there's lots of ways to improvise if you just have slightly less than what's required for the pattern. But what she's looking for here is roughly a full skein of fingering weight yarn, and it's beautiful. So this is called the Lone Skein Shawl. It has little tassels on the ends, which I think is just, I say tassels, I should say fringe. Has little fringe on the end that, no, those are tassels. Yeah, that's super, like, yeah, that's tassels. But I love that. I love some tassels. I love some fringe. And it's a lovely size for moving into spring. Super wearable. You can kind of bulk it up if you want. You can, you know, cinch it up a little closer if it's a little bit chillier and you want to wear it under a coat. I'm loving this. I love the way it looks with that variegated yarn that she's using in the design. So it looks like it would be beautiful for a solid color or even a speckled variegated yarn. Ugh, it's just really classic. She knows how to do a shawl, I'm telling you. She's like the queen of fingering weight shawls. So that is the Lone Skein Shawl by Joji Locatelli. It's available for download for $6 US on Ravelry. I've linked to it down below. It calls for a light fingering, but it's a shawl, so it really doesn't matter what gauge you're doing here as long as you're using the appropriate needle size. It's using a light fingering on a US size 7, so you can kind of gauge yours. If you have a little bit of a heavy fingering or a sport weight, you could just go up or down needle sizes depending. But it looks fantastic. And who doesn't love something that you can complete with just one skein of yarn? And not only that, even though it's using fingering weight yarn, it looks like something that would be finished in a relatively short amount of time if it is something that you're working on pretty consistently. Looking forward to spring when you can wear it, and even late winter when you can wear it and be proud of something that you finished in the new year. This next one is a design that I just recently saw pop up on my Ravelry, and I think it's actually because it's new. I think it was just released, December of 2022. This is the Gro Hat by Lerga of Fiber Tales. So if you're familiar with Fiber Tales, it's a podcast here on YouTube. She's also a knitwear designer, and she makes some really gorgeous rustic knits, and this is one of those. So it's a really beautiful beanie with some nice kind of like foliage texture running up the side, and it has like that classic watch cap style. So it's neither slouchy nor is it cone shaped at the top. It's just that really classic watch cap style that fits down over your head nice and snug to keep you nice and warm. And it has a doubled over brim and that really beautiful, almost like whatever the foliage is. Let me see if she mentions it. She does mention things like that in her description about how it's inspired. Okay, it says the Gro Hat is part of a series of grow patterns that are all inspired by growing plants. The Gro Hat will keep your head nice and toasty on cold winter days, especially when you knit in a plump woolen spun yarn. So it's just inspired by new growth, especially moving into spring. I think that's really appropriate. So I really love this one. It uses only a skein of DK weight yarn, and I feel like you can have fun picking some fun yarns out of your stash to really show off that foliage kind of texture along the side of the hat. I think it's just classic. And I love the decreases in this hat as well. You can kind of see them right here. I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see those decreases. The decreases create kind of a line that radiates up away from the center of the top of the hat and connects to the central stem of the foliage texture. And I think that's so clever. Really, really beautiful hat. So that is the Gro Hat by Lerga of Fiber Tales. Okay, this next one I love because it's an all-season knit, but it's a fun one to knit as like a Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve cast on, because that's a time to kind of cast on to something maybe a little different, something you wouldn't usually cast on, so that moving into the coming year, you have something new to use. And this one here, I feel like fits the bill beautifully. And that is the Alice Net Bag. This is a pattern by I hope I don't pronounce this incorrectly, but I probably will. Alla Cintor. I apologize if I'm butchering that. Alla Cintor is the designer for the Alice Net Bag, and this is just a really gorgeous market style, meshy looking bag. Ugh, and it's so pretty, especially in the colors that she's showing in her sample photos. This beautiful wine red color is gorgeous. And then of course you have this really lovely kind of like a leathery tan color. Really pretty. So this is an all-season knit, something you can have all year round. You can knit it in a really lovely cotton if you wanted. You can mix it with a different fiber to give it a little bit of a funky edge. Maybe even add a floof in there, which could be really cool if you want it to be a little bit more of a winter market style bag. But I'm loving this. She's using she actually lists lots of different options, but most of these are cotton options. And in my opinion, I feel like that's a really great way to go if you're knitting a market bag. Another really great way to knit a market bag is to head to the thrift store, find a sweater from the thrift store with a fun yarn that is made of cotton, unravel that sweater. I'll link to a video that tells you how to do that down below, and use that yarn to make your market bag. I've done it before, and it's a really great way to make market bags. It's sustainable, and it's fun to find fun yarns in sweaters from thrift stores. So that is the Alice Net Bag, and I think that's a lot of fun as an option for a Christmas Eve cast on, especially for those of us living down south in the southern hemisphere where it's warm right now. This is a little bit more appropriate. It feels like it's more in line with that vibe. So I think this is a great option, coming in at number 3 for our Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve cast-ons. Okay, in a recent video, I talked about knitting a hot water bottle cover as a quick knit for a gift for Christmas. Now, I am all about hot water bottles right now. I don't know why that's kind of a new idea for me. I've used electric heat pads in the past, but I've never had a hot water bottle. I use those rice bags that you microwave when the kids have earaches or things like that. So I have those, but a hot water bottle I've never considered. And now that I know about knitting little covers for them, I'm all about hot water bottles. So I'm bringing it up again here because I found a design for a hot water bottle by Drops Designs, and it's called 'Tis the Season to Be Cozy. And it's a hot water bottle cover that's plain stockinette in super bulky weight yarn. So it's definitely going to give you that instant gratification, which in this case is good because you want to be able to use it while the weather is cold. And I love this design. I love the way that it looks here in this really lovely snow white yarn, but this is what my thoughts were when it came to knitting this. I have noticed on Instagram a few knitters working with this new Lion brand yarn called Go for Faux, and it's a faux fur super bulky weight yarn, and it's so cool. It's very I mean, when I say it looks realistic, I just mean it looks like legit faux fur and super soft. And I was thinking knitting a hot water bottle cover like this that requires super bulky yarn in this Lion brand Go for Faux yarn would be amazing, because you could sit there and just almost like pet your water bottle as you're using it, and it would be super cozy. So I don't know, that's my thoughts. I saw this design and I instantly thought that the two of those things together would be perfect. A marriage of functionality and softness that you really can't go wrong with. Plus it's a hot water bottle, and I'm really into those right now. So anyway, this is the 'Tis the Season to Be Cozy hot water bottle cover by Drops Design. I would suggest knitting this if you're doing it for any purpose, but if you're doing this as a Christmas Eve cast on, knitting this in that Go for Faux yarn by Lion brand would be amazing. So that is coming in at number 2 on my list. Okay, for number 1 on my list of cast-ons for Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, I decided to go with something for those of us who are new to sweater knitting or new to garment knitting. If you would like to start 2023 with a new sweater knit, or even get yourself into knitting a sweater, learning a little bit more about garment knitting, I mean, it's a great time to start. This is a design for you. This is called the Step-by-Step Sweater. It is a free pattern. It is by Florence Miller, and it is a fully handheld walkthrough of how to knit your first sweater. It's a really basic but beautiful raglan sleeve top-down sweater with really lovely shaping. It looks like something super wearable. It has some positive ease built into the design. It's just a really cool sweater, and it's knit with an Aran weight yarn, so you aren't knitting with a super small yarn. It's not a super bulky sweater, so it is going to be wearable, but it's something that you can get on and off the needles relatively quickly as you learn how to knit your first sweater. And then for those of us who have already knit sweaters in the past and we're just looking for something really easy, really basic, and really wearable, this is a really good option for that. It uses anywhere from 738 to 1,722 yards, which is 675 or 1,575 meters of yarn. So you are going to require a little bit more yarn for this. It might be difficult to stash dive for this, but it's a great place to start knitting garments in the new year. And it mentions in here, so it has 7 sizes are available, but it does mention if the pattern has not been graded into a size that fits you and you would like to knit this sweater, please contact me and I can grade some additional sizes as required, which is really awesome for those of us that are looking for larger sizes, smaller sizes, things that aren't available here. She's willing to work with you on that. And I think what's available in this design for free is really phenomenal. So I wanted to share that with you as the number 1 ideas for Christmas Eve cast on or New Year's Eve cast on, because number 1, it's free. You get a ton for your money, which is nothing. You get a big bang for your buck, and you get to have that first sweater knit for the new year, and hands are held throughout the process so you can feel confident about what you're working on. And there are video tutorials that go with it as well. So I just think this is a really great option for those of us moving into 2023, wanting to learn more about knitting garments, or just looking for a really great classic wardrobe staple piece. I feel like we're all kind of having itchy fingers right now, wanting to cast on things for ourselves because we probably have been busy doing a lot of holiday knitting, and now we're starting to think, what are we gonna knit going into the new year for either myself or for loved ones, but just something new. And I think Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve is a really great opportunity to cast onto something new and have that to look forward to. And I think that these are fun options that are approachable, not too large, not too much of a time investment, also not too much of a yarn investment, just things that are cozy and comfortable and fun to knit moving into 2023. And in the case of the step-by-step sweater, possibly something that might get you into garment knitting if you're not already there yet. I hope you took something away from this. Thank you so much for joining me on this little dive into 8 ideas for Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve cast-ons. If you took value from this video, please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe and be sure to click the bell icon so you can be notified anytime I upload things new here on the channel. It's been so lovely spending this time with you. I will be seeing you after Christmas on the next episode of the Midweek Ramble, which will be next Wednesday. I hope that if you are celebrating Christmas or any holiday this season, that you have a lovely one with your family and friends. Until I see you again, happy knitting, happy making, happy holidays, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.